They say the ocean remembers everything. Every drop that's ever fallen, every life that's ever been claimed. And in the story we're about to tell, the ocean's memory plays a chilling role. Because sometimes, the most terrifying truths are hidden beneath the surface, disguised as harmony. Transition to images of Evelyn as a child by the ocean, interspersed with early photos of SeaWorld and its orca shows. Our story centers on Evelyn. Hope, not a name you hear often in headlines these days, but a name etched in the history of marine parks for all the wrong reasons. Evelyn wasn't just a trainer, she was something of an anomaly. Where others saw performing animals, she saw individual beings, complex and intelligent. From the moment she first stepped into SeaWorld, she wasn't there for the applause or the spectacle. She was there for the connection. Show images of Evelyn interacting with various marine animals, highlighting her gentle touch and focused attention. Evelyn had an almost uncanny ability to connect with marine life. Dolphin encounters that seemed to defy logic. Sea lion training sessions where the animals responded to the slightest gesture. But it was her connection with orcas, the apex predators of the sea, that truly set her apart. Transition to specific footage of Evelyn with Nyros, a large, powerful bull orca. Early footage shows seemingly genuine interaction and trust. And that's where Nyros comes in. Nyros was a legend at SeaWorld, a massive bull orca brought in from Iceland in the early 90s. He was a cornerstone of the park's orca program, powerful, intelligent, and undeniably charismatic. He was the star attraction. But Nyros was also known for his unpredictable nature. He wasn't as easily swayed by typical training methods. Some trainers found him challenging, even intimidating. Images shift subtly. Early footage is contrasted with later footage showing Nyros looking less engaged, more distant. But Evelyn saw something different. She saw a sensitivity beneath the surface, a quiet intelligence that resonated with her own deep connection to the ocean. She spent hours observing him, learning his rhythms, his preferences, his moods. She didn't force him, she waited. And slowly, painstakingly, a bond began to form. Show images of Evelyn and Nyros working together. But with a growing undercurrent of tension in the music and visual cues, their performances became legendary, a seamless blend of skill and trust. A mesmerizing dance between human and orca. Evelyn's career skyrocketed. She became the face of SeaWorld, the embodiment of the human-animal bond they so proudly promoted. Promotional videos, magazine covers, TV appearances. Evelyn and Nyros were everywhere. Cut to shots of SeaWorld marketing materials, interspersed with glimpses of Evelyn looking increasingly uncomfortable during interviews. But behind the dazzling smiles and synchronized leaps, something was starting to shift. Subtle signs, easily missed by the casual observer, but impossible for Evelyn to ignore. Nyros' behavior began to change. Small refusals during routines, a momentary hesitation before a cue, a flick of the tail that felt different, more forceful, more frustrated. Show split-screen footage, one side showing the polished, perfect performance, the other side showing a close-up of Nyros' eye, looking increasingly distant and troubled. These weren't outright acts of aggression, not yet, but they were warnings. Whispers of discontent from a creature whose voice had been silenced for too long. Evelyn tried to voice her concerns. She documented the changes in her reports, hoping someone would listen, hoping someone would see what she was seeing. Cut to images of Evelyn writing in a notebook, her face etched with worry. But SeaWorld, with its meticulously crafted image of harmony and its relentless pursuit of profit, wasn't interested in whispers. It was interested in spectacle. The summer season was approaching, and the pressure to deliver record-breaking crowds was immense. Show quick cuts of SeaWorld executives in meetings, focused on numbers and profit margins. The subtle signs of Naros's unease were dismissed as moodiness or normal variations in behavior. Evelyn was told to trust her instincts, but that trust only extended as far as it served the park's interests. The unspoken message was clear: keep the show going, no matter what. Show images of Evelyn looking increasingly isolated, caught between her loyalty to Neros and the demands of SeaWorld. And so, Evelyn found herself trapped. Her deep connection with Neros, once celebrated, now became a liability. The closer she felt to him, the more she saw, the more she understood, the more she realized the terrifying truth that the illusion of harmony was built on a foundation of growing despair, and that the consequences of ignoring the warnings could be devastating. Music fades slightly, leaving a sense of foreboding. SeaWorld was built on illusion. It was never just about the animals. It was about the story, the fantasy, the shimmering spectacle where whales leaped on cue, trainers danced on dorsal fins, and children squealed with delight as fountains of salt water rained from the sky. For over half a century, the park had mastered the art of hiding reality beneath a polished surface. And for most guests, the illusion worked perfectly. But beneath that gloss, behind the tanks, the lights, the carefully curated smiles, another story was quietly unfolding. Internally, the staff called it the shift, the moment when the older whales stopped responding the way they used to, when commands had to be repeated, when tail slaps got harder, when shows started to rely more on lights and music than on actual animal behavior. SeaWorld didn't speak publicly about the shift, but those who worked behind the scenes, trainers, veterinarians, behaviorists, knew it was real and it was growing. The problem wasn't just aging animals. It was a system stretched thin. Orcas that had spent decades circling concrete. Enclosures were beginning to exhibit what experts called stereotypic behavior. Swimming in tight loops, chewing on metal grates, slamming against gates. Obvious signs of stress, of frustration, of minds unraveling. And yet, every time someone raised a concern, they were met with the same phrase: it's under control. Evelyn saw it happening, not just in Nero's, but in the others too. The younger whales growing more anxious, the older ones withdrawing, becoming almost catatonic. In meeting after meeting, she voiced what others were too cautious to say aloud. This isn't just fatigue, it's breaking point behavior. But SeaWorld was preparing for summer. The marketing team had already locked in a new campaign. Corporate sponsors were watching. A single cancelled show could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. There was absolutely no room for doubt. One email from her manager read, "Let's not panic over small shifts in attitude. Keep the sessions short. Increase enrichment." Another added, "Neros is a legacy performer. The public expects to see him. We trust your judgment, Evelyn." They trusted her, but only when it suited the schedule. There was something particularly cruel about that trust. It disguised itself as confidence, but functioned as liability transfer. If anything went wrong, it wouldn't be the system, it would be the trainer. Evelyn knew this, and still, she stayed, because she wasn't there for SeaWorld. She was there for him. What she didn't know was that Naros's file had already been redacted. Earlier incidents 2 separate cases where he had lunged at other trainers during nighttime routines were quietly removed from internal systems. HR had marked them as miscommunication events. Both trainers were reassigned. Both signed NDAs. Neither spoke about it again. And Evelyn, she was never told to the public. Neros was a symbol of harmony between human and beast. His image was printed on souvenir cups. His name echoed through the stadium before every show. The mighty Neros, they'd shout. He was a brand now. A product, one that sold tickets, t-shirts, dreams. And as long as he kept moving, the illusion held. But the cracks were spreading. Veterinary logs showed irregular sleep cycles, decreased appetite, and abrasions on his dorsal fin from excessive pacing. But each concern was met with polished language. No immediate cause for concern, within expected parameters. Monitoring. Closely, they weren't monitoring. They were deflecting. SeaWorld didn't need truth. It needed control. And Evelyn, gifted, devoted, increasingly uneasy, was becoming a liability in private. Co-workers whispered about her. She's getting too close, someone said. She won't report things unless they're really serious, said another. But Evelyn wasn't reckless. She was loyal, and that loyalty had slowly turned into silence. She stopped documenting the small warning signs, stopped reporting Nerys's increasing agitation. If no one would act on them, what was the point? Still, her unease grew with each passing day. In the tank, Neros had begun to avoid eye contact. His routines lost their rhythm. He would start a maneuver, then break it midway. He ignored signals, circled tighter, sank deeper. One morning, during a private training session, he charged the underwater gate with such force that it rattled the entire stadium. Evelyn stood frozen, watching the echo ripple across the water. She didn't report that incident either, because deep down, she already knew that Neros was slipping, that the walls of his world were closing in, that the illusion SeaWorld clung to was one bad moment away from collapse. But there's something about systems built on spectacle. They don't break quietly. They shatter loudly, violently, publicly. And when they do, it's not the system that bleeds first. It's the person closest to the animal in the final weeks before. The summer showcase, Evelyn began to wake up with a pit in her stomach. It wasn't nerves. She had performed with Neros hundreds of times. It was something deeper, a quiet, gnawing sensation that something was shifting, not just in the animal, but in the atmosphere itself. The air around the training tank felt heavier, more dense. The silence between commands lingered longer. And Neros was no longer looking at her the same way. He had always been slow to trust, cautious, deliberate, but he had been responsive, affectionate even. Now, when Evelyn approached the pool, he would remain submerged, sometimes for several minutes, completely ignoring her presence. On some days, he would perform with sharp, robotic precision. On others, he would float in the corner like a shadow. Unmoving, uninterested. He had begun refusing food, slapping his tail harder than usual. And once, during a routine breach maneuver, he surfaced too close, so close that the backwash nearly knocked Evelyn off the platform. She laughed it off, said it was mistiming, but her laugh was thin, unconvincing even to herself. The staff noticed it too. A junior trainer reported that Neros had started dragging his teeth along the edge of the tank. Another said he refused tactile contact, which he had once accepted easily. The lead vet logged a note: increased pacing, decreased socialization, possible enclosure stress. But nothing changed. SeaWorld was ramping up the promotions. Evelyn's face was already printed on the summer banners beside Neri. Two silhouettes outlined against the sky, with the words, "The bond that amazes." She wrote a formal report. In it, she listed refusal to respond to secondary cues, violent gate contact, avoidant behavior, breach near personnel. At the bottom, she underlined it. Nairos is not safe to perform. The reply came 2 days later from upper management. Let's avoid overreacting. Focus on enrichment. Rotate in another handler for rehearsals if necessary. We trust your experience, Evelyn. There it was again. Trust. A word used like a shield, meant to silence what everyone already felt. They were running out of time. Evelyn didn't push back. She couldn't. She was already under scrutiny, seen by some as too attached, too emotionally entangled. One more flagged report, and she risked reassignment, or worse, so she stayed quiet, smiled, showed up, did the work. And at night, when the guests had gone and the lights dimmed, she sat at the tank's edge, watching Nairos circle like a planet with no orbit. She still spoke to him, still believed he was listening, but in reality, Nairos had begun charging the steel gates with increasing force. Staff counted 6 separate impacts in the span of just 3 days. During one early morning training session, he slammed against the center divider with such velocity that it cracked one of the filtration valves. Evelyn didn't tell anyone. She just stared at the water, heart pounding, unable to look away. Because something in that sound, the boom of body against barrier, felt final. This wasn't misbehavior. It wasn't disobedience. It was despair. Orcas are not meant to be alone. In the wild, they form pods, matrilineal families that span lifetimes. They mourn, they remember, they feel. But Nairos had spent 32 long years in captivity, across 3 different parks, with 6 lost companions. His last tankmate had died 2 years earlier during a routine medical procedure. Since then, he had been kept isolated, alone, watching humans through glass while swimming in the same exhausted circles. Evelyn had tried to fill that space, to become something for him to hold on to. But she wasn't a pod, she wasn't kin, and Now Rossi was beginning to remember that the truth is a dangerous thing, especially when it threatens a carefully constructed facade. And the terrifying truth about Evelyn Hope's final performance wasn't just about a rogue orca. It was about a system rotten to the core, a system that valued profit over life, spectacle over safety, and denial over responsibility. In the hours leading up to that fateful show, a palpable tension hung in the air backstage. Evelyn, though outwardly composed, carried the weight of her suppressed warnings like a physical burden. She'd spent the morning in a silent standoff with upper management, a dance of veiled threats and empty reassurances. They needed this show to go on. The sponsors were expecting it. The summer crowds were demanding it. And Evelyn, with her unparalleled connection to Nairos, was the only one who could deliver. The revised routine, a watered-down version of their usual performance, was a testament to Evelyn's desperate attempt to mitigate the risk. Gone were the daring underwater dives, the close contact interactions, the moments of seemingly effortless trust. What remained was a pale imitation, a shadow of the spectacle it once was. But even this diluted version carried a deadly potential as the crowds began to file in, their excited chatter echoing through the stadium. Evelyn made one last plea. She cornered Dr. Lee, the head veterinarian, away from prying eyes. Her voice was low, urgent. "He's not right, Lee. I know you see it too. The pacing, the aggression. He's a powder keg ready to explode. Dr. Lee, a man worn down by years of bureaucratic battles, sighed. I've documented my concerns, Evelyn. You know how far that goes. They want the show, he paused, his gaze shifting towards the teeming stands. Just be careful. Those two words, be careful, hung in the air, a flimsy shield against the impending storm. Evelyn knew careful wasn't enough, but it was all she had. The moments before the performance were a blur of forced smiles, deep breaths, and silent prayers. The deafening roar of the crowd, the pulsating music, the bright lights, it all felt surreal. A grotesque pantomime unfolding before a captive audience. When Evelyn stepped onto the platform, she could feel Naris's presence beneath the surface. A dark mass of pent-up energy. The familiar anticipation was replaced by a chilling unease. His eyes, usually filled with a spark of recognition, were distant, almost vacant. The initial moments of the show were deceptively smooth. Nairos executed the basic commands with robotic precision, his movements lacking the usual fluidity and grace. The crowd cheered, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension that crackled in the air. Evelyn went through the motions, her body on autopilot, her mind racing with 1,000 worst-case scenarios. Then came the fatal moment, the synchronized swim, the move that had been celebrated as a symbol of their unbreakable bond. As Evelyn slipped into the water, she felt a shift, a subtle change in Naros's energy. He wasn't following her lead. He was waiting. What followed was a horrifying display of raw power and unbridled rage. Nairos, fueled by years of confinement, frustration, and loss, unleashed his fury upon the one person he had seemingly trusted. The water erupted in a maelstrom of violence, the joyous spectacle transforming into a scene of unimaginable horror. The details of the attack are too graphic to recount in full. The crushing blows, the desperate struggle, the blood-stained water. It's a nightmare etched into the collective memory of those who witnessed it. For 28 agonizing minutes, Nairos held Evelyn captive beneath the surface, a stark reminder of the wildness that could never be fully extinguished. When Evelyn's body was finally recovered, it was a broken shell, a testament to the devastating consequences of exploiting the natural world. The cheers of the crowd were replaced by horrified screams. The illusion of harmony shattered beyond repair. But the tragedy didn't end there. In the aftermath, SeaWorld launched into damage control, a calculated effort to minimize the fallout and protect their bottom line. The incident was labeled an accident, a tragic but unavoidable consequence of working with wild animals. Blame was subtly shifted towards Evelyn. Her close bond with Nairos portrayed as a form of reckless endangerment. The truth, however, was far more damning. The truth was that Evelyn Hope was a victim, not just of a tragic accident, but of a system that prioritized profit over safety, spectacle over welfare, and denial over accountability. The internal investigation that followed was a sham, a whitewash designed to protect the company from legal repercussions. Key evidence was suppressed, dissenting voices were silenced, and the underlying causes of the tragedy were conveniently ignored. Naros, the magnificent creature who had become a symbol of SeaWorld's success, was relegated to a back tank, his future uncertain. He became a liability, a living embodiment of the company's darkest secret in the end. Evelyn Hope's death became a catalyst, a turning point in the long and bitter debate over the ethics of keeping orcas in captivity. Her sacrifice exposed the dark underbelly of the marine park industry, forcing a reckoning with the true cost of entertainment. But her legacy extends beyond the headlines and the legal battles. Evelyn Hope became a symbol of the price paid for exploiting the wild. A reminder that even the most seemingly harmonious relationships can be shattered by the constraints of captivity. She was a testament to the enduring power of nature and the devastating consequences of ignoring its inherent dignity. Her story serves as a haunting warning. When you cage the wild, you unleash something far more dangerous than any individual animal. You unleash the consequences of your own hubris.